in the Gemara, Ein oisem mitzvahs chavilos chavilos. What's an example of that? Ein oisem mitzvahs chavilos chavilos. So the Gemara here's the Gemara in Soita, I think the first paragraph of Soita, Daf Ches maybe. Let's say we put an advertisement in a newspaper that whoever has an Eved Ivri and who's about to go free at the end of 6 years, the Eved Ivri goes free. He goes free whatever comes first, either the end of the 6 years or Yom Kippur Sheyovel, if Yovel is Nayeg. The end of the 6 years has nothing to do with Shemitah. Shemitah is, that's a calendaric. The end of the 6 years, whenever he was sold as an Eved Ivri. He was sold as an Eved Ivri, let's say, on Zion Adar. So 6 years later, on Vav Adar, he goes free. That's the end of the 6 years. Zion Adar, after 6 years, is the first day in the 7th year. So he goes free on Vav Adar. So an Omo Ivriya goes free either Sheish or Yom Kippur Shal Yovel, or when she becomes a Gedolah, when she becomes a Naira at the age of 12. So let's say an Eved Ivri wants to stay on. He likes it. He doesn't have to worry about Parnasa. He has a steady job. And Odin gives him food to eat. So you do Ritzia. So let's say you put an advertisement in the newspaper. The Mishnah says when they did the Ritzia. When did they do the Ritzia? I think the Echad Be'adar. Something like that. That's the... I told over this story once about, I think this year, that the Chazon Ish, when he was a teenager, wanted to go learn in a yeshiva. So he went to the Panim yeshiva. So Bitzel Panim at the head of the yeshiva was very sharp. So he said big pilpulim. Bitzel Panim had big chidushim. His chidushim are so big, a lot of times we don't accept his shittas l'psak halacha. That's too big a chiddush. Had a lot of wild chidushim. So he was giving a shir. So he assumed, I thought that was Pashup Shat Negmar also. I'm not such a genius. He thought that every Eved Ivri, you do the Ritzia the last day. I gave an example. He was sold as an Eved Ivri on Zion Adar. So 6 years later on Vav Adar, he goes free. And if he doesn't want to go free, so you have to do the Ritzia on the last day. So the Chazon Ish, as a teenager, knew that that was wrong. Every Eved was sold on Erev Rosh Chodesh Adar. I think the first Mishnah in Shkolim says, Becha B'Adar Roitzim Esu Avodim. The Bezdin puts it in an advertisement in the newspapers and on the radio and on TV, whatever. Whoever has an Eved Ivri and he wants to stay on, so we're going to do the Ritzia in the Bezdin's office on Rosh Chodesh Adar. Every Eved Ivri was sold on the second day of Adar. So Rosh Chodesh Adar is next to is the last day in Sheish. How can it be? You sell an Eved Ivri. Equally, any day of the year you sell an Eved Ivri. So you see from the Mishnah, you don't have to do the Ritzia after the last day. That was the Mishnah. That was the story that the Chazon Ish knew that it was against the Mishnah. So it was sitting in the base medrash. So it was for him and all the bookcases all over. So he took out a Gemara Psachim from the bookcase. Psachim usually have Shkolim in the end. He opened it up to the first page in Shkolim. He walked up to the front, and Rabbi Bitzel was saying the Shir by the Stender. They put it on top of the Gemara, on top of the Stender. They were learning Kiddushin, the name of Eved Ivri in the first pair. Put it on the Stender, and he walked out, and he decided he's not going to stay in this yeshiva, because this time I caught him with a mistake. Next time I won't know that he's trying to sell me a bill of goods, tell me that's not true. So he learned by himself. He tried out different yeshivas. He went to learn by Rab Chaim also. He wanted to learn by Rab Chaim, but he realized he won't be able to be Nizer and Chodesh. If he's going to learn Rab Chaim, so he was, as a teenager, he was Makban HaChodesh. So the Gemara has it in, a mashken shtei soitas kachas. He's not allowed to have, let's say, there are a lot of husbands who are choshet their wives, that they're mizana. So you have you put an advertisement in a newspaper, we have a special bezdin in the Beis HaMikdash to take care of all the couples who have an issue of soita. So everyone who has this issue should come on Sunday morning, Parshas Lech Lecha, whatever, and we're going to take care of it. And the Beis HaMikdash is going to take care of all the Seitas. So all the people are lined up, and they're taking care one after the other, after the other, after the other. You don't have people lined up to do Ritziah and every day. You don't have them all lined up in a row and you act them off one by one. Because that's a violation of Einois Mitzvahs Chavilos. It looks like it's a burden, it's a nuisance, it's a pain in the neck, and you want to get rid of the mitzvahs, this obligation. So you say everybody line up and they're going to do it mass production. Mass production takes away from the chashivas of the mitzvah. Each one should be done separately. That's takashayla when you bench by a wedding. So you're going to say Birchas Hamazon over 1 cup of wine. You're going to say Sheva Brachos over another cup of wine. So the common practice usually is that before they bench, they fill up 2 cups of wine. Then they take the first cup of wine and they bench Birchas Hamazon. And then you mechabed other people to say the Sheva Brachos later on. So the Prisha is a commentary on the bottom of the page in the tour. So the Prisha says you fill up the 2 cups of wine before the benching, and then 1 cup you use for the benching, the other cup you use for the Sheva Brachos. You don't use the same cup for the benching and the Sheva Brachos. That's Machlokes and Rishonim. The Tosfos says it has 2 days about that. That also may be a violation of Einois Mitzvahs Chavilos. You have to recite Birchas Hamazon HaKos. You have to recite Sheva Brachos HaKos. You're going to take 1 kos. You're going to take kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Looks like you want to get rid of the mitzvahs quickly. So that's what Tosfos had 2 days about that. You have to have 2 separate koses, because if you have 1 kos, it looks like chavilos. Or do you say no? Whenever you bench by a Sudas Chasana, the Brachos Hamazon usually has 4 brachas. And then you finish the 4th bracha when you say the Olam Chasrein. And the rest, Harachmans, that's HaEzer that was added in the days of the Gaonim. That's a minig. But the benching is over when you say the Olam Chasrein. Strictly speaking, the benching is over when you say B'nei Racham of Yerushalayim Amen. That's why you say Amen, because the benching is over. The Bracha Tova Meitiv is not even part of the benching Midrabanan. It's a bracha that was added on after the conclusion of the Brachos Hamazon. That's what the Beis HaLevi has. Beis HaLevi on Chumash only has on Bereshis and Shmos, and then in between Bereshis and Shmos there was a blank page. So in Europe, they didn't want to waste any paper. So when they would print the Sefer and there would be a blank page, they would write Kadesha Lo Lahotzi Hana Yor Chalok, not to miss out. Paper was expensive. Today, people throw paper in the garbage. There's nothing, but it's not right. We waste a lot of paper. So whenever there would be a blank page in the Sefer, the author, he wrote a Sefer on Choshen Mishpat, but there's a blank page that he wrote a shtickle Torah on Yevamis. Had nothing to do with the rest of the Sefer. Just Kadesha Lo Lahotzi Hana Yor Chalok. So the Beis HaLevi, in between Bereshis and Shmos, had 1 blank page. So it's a hefsid mammon to waste 1 page. They should be blank. So he wrote 4 paragraphs that have nothing to do with each other, nothing to do with Bereshis or Shmos. And he printed 4 divrei Torah. So one of the 4 paragraphs is about this, that Atova Meita at the end of the benching is not even part of the benching Midrabanan. Birchas Hamazon ends at the end of Menator, it ends upon the Rachma of Yerushalayim Amen. And Atova Meita was added on later. Kishenitnu Harugei. Was it Moshe Kishenitnu Harugei Betar Lekvura? After the rebellion, when the Tanoim were rebelling against the Roman government, they slaughtered so many people at that time. And the Gemara said they didn't have to water the fields because there was so much blood from the Jewish people who were killed by the Romans for years. Everything was growing well. So that's when they made the takana on Shinu Yayin. You should say Atayva Meitiv. If you have a lot of people sitting together, 2 or more is a lot. You have 2 or more people sitting together, and then they have a shutvus and wine. So first they drink, they have different kinds of wine. And the second wine is better than the first one. And the third wine is better than the second. The fourth wine is better than the third. And they're all drinking together with a Shina Yain. So you say Atayv Ameitiv. Each time you have a Shina Yain, you say Atayv Ameitiv. That was instituted when Haruge Beta, when Ditnu Lekvur. So the same thing that Atayv Ameitiv after the benching is the same bracha of Shina Yain. It's not that this is part of the benching. It's a separate bracha that they instituted to be recited after the conclusion of the benching. That's why we say Panim Rachma Yerushalayim Amen. Amen means that we finish the Brachos HaMazon Deraisa. The last bracha is midrabanan mean. Midrabanan means not even part of the benching. It's a separate bracha. So the Rambam in one place in Hilchos Brachos, when he quotes Brachos HaMazon, the Rambam says usually Brachos HaMazon has 4 brachas. The 4th bracha, okay, strictly speaking, is not part of the benching, but we say that after the 3 brachas, you have 4 brachas, and when you have Sheva brachas, so the 1 bracha is Bar Piakov, and then you have another 6 brachas, and 6 and 4 is 10. So you have the benching is 10 brachas then. So according to the Rambam, it sounds like the Sheva brachas at the end of the meal of the Sudas Chasana. It's not 2 different mitzvahs. It's not that you need 1 cup of wine for this and 1 cup of wine for that. The benching is longer. The benching has another 6 brachas, and then you say Bar Piagofen. It's not that you have Sheva brachas, it's 1 unit, and you should really have 2 different cups of wine. According to the Rambam, it's probably better to have everything over 1 cup of wine. Let's say when you bench Brachos HaMazon HaKos, so you have 4 different cups of wine, 1 cup of wine for Azonos HaKol, 1 cup of wine for another. You don't. You have 1 cup of wine. Why isn't that a violation of any mitzvah? The answer is, it's 1 mitzvah Brachos HaMazon. So the Rambam in Hilchos Brachos describes it. Hilchos Ishus, he talks about Sheva brachas under the chuppah. In Hilchos Brachos, he talks about Sheva brachas at the end of benching. The benching is longer today. Let's say on a regular day, people are benching and you want to bench HaKos, and you want to have 4 cups of wine. 1 cup of wine for Azonos HaKol, 1 cup for Noidelecha. Is that acceptable? So the Gemara in Ksubis, we're just up to that Gemara. The Gemara in Ksubis sounds like there's nothing wrong with it. If you want, you can do everything on 1 cup of wine. If you want, you can do it on 4 cups of wine. Here, the Gemara says, B'beisa Ovil. There's a Mishnah in Sanhedrin that the Haruge Bezdin, before they would put them to death, Skila Streifa, Herechenik, it's painful when someone's going to kill you. You suffer. People suffer when they come to the end, when they die. So the Gemara quotes a pasuk in, I think it's a Mishlei, Tunu shechel oived v'yayin lemare nefesh. Give liquor to one who's going to lose his life, and give wine to one who is bitter. So that's why. So the Gemara says, Lo nivra yayin, that's the Gemara in Sanhedrin, I think, Daf Ayin. Lo nivra yayin ela denachem boyas ha'avelim. The Rebbeinu Shalom created a whole world, and different things in the world are for different purposes. Okay? So you need gold in the world because there are certain things in the Beis HaMikdash that have to be made from gold. You need chelas in the world because you need chelas in the big dekuni, you need chelas in the tzitzis. You need different things in the world to be able to fulfill certain mitzvahs. So the Gemara says, why did the Rebbeinu Shalom institute such a thing that if you make wine, you squeeze out the grape juice, then you let it sit, it'll ferment, it'll have a alcoholic content. Avelim are aggravated over the death of a close dear relative, so we don't want them to get stone drunk, but we want them to relax a little bit. So you should give them yain. Here in the neighborhood, Rabbi Breuer died at the age of 98. He died a long time ago, 40 years ago, a long time ago.
Yeah,
something like that. So they said that he would be makbid when you have this Sudas Havrah. Sudas Havrah. Rashi over here on the top of Chesam and Beis, in the second line, third line, talks about Sudas Havrah. The Gemara says, Avol Yom Rishon, the 7 days of Shiva. So after the Kvura, then the Shiva begins. Before the Kvura, there's no Averis. After the Kvura, then the Shiva begins. So the first Suda, the Gemara says, Avol Yom Rishon, is not allowed to eat from his own food. You have to have other people have to give him the Sudas Havrah. It's a question, is it only Abel Yom Rishon or the Suda Rishona on the Yom Rishon? What if he's going to have, it really comes up. He's going to have 2 Sudas when they're going to they're going to bury him at 9 o'clock in the morning. He's going to have 2 meals in that day. Maybe, it's possible. But Rashi says a lot of times Suda Rishona on the Yom Rishon. Suda Shnei on the Yom Rishon, you don't have to. Other Rishonim say no. Avol Yom Rishon, Asalecha Mishalo. Sudas Havra. So Rabbi Breuer used to insist, that's what they told me, that by the Sudas Havra you have to give Yayin, because that's what the Gemara says. Never Yayin Ela the Nachem Boyas Havelim. You have to give wine, not that he should get stone drunk. He should relax a little bit. He shouldn't be so tense. I remember once in the summertime, there was a dentist who used to live in Tannersville, New York, in upstate New York, where I go in the summertime for many years. So he used to come to shul every Shabbos. So, but there was no Jewish education for his son. So the son was brought up like no Torah education at all. So when the mother died, I think the father died first, and the mother had no father, had no mother. He wasn't married. He was all alone. So he got drunk. And we told him we're going to make a minyan for him, and he's going to say Kaddish. He knew how to read Hebrew. He's going to say Kaddish. So we came to daven mincha for him. He was fast asleep. He was drunk in his bed. He drank so much. He got that. That's ridiculous. They're not supposed to be stone drunk. Supposed to relax a little bit. Other Rishonim say that by this Sudas Hara should be basa v'yayin. Why the yayin? The Gemara only says why the basa. The Gemara only says yayin. The never yayin ela nachem ba'as havel. They quoted that pasuk from Mishlei. To know sheikh ha'ovid the yayin le mar nefesh. The Gemara said that's why they used to give strong wine to those who are going to get Mrs. Bezdin, so they shouldn't feel the full pain when they're going to be dying. So why basa v'yayin? So some of the Rishonim say that's a Suda Chashuva. You should give a Suda Chashuva to the oval, basa v'yayin. Most of the time they don't give that. Most of the time they give the milchiks. That's not right. They should really give basa v'yayin by the Suda Savra. So the Gemara says that they used to give the oval 10 cups of wine. The wine wasn't as strong as our wine. It wasn't the kind of wine we have. So the Gemara said first they would give 3 cups of wine before they started eating as an introduction. Then in the middle of the meal they would have another 3 cups of wine. Instead of drinking water or soda, so they would have wine. And then when they said the benching, so there was 1 cup of wine for Hazanas HaKol, 1 cup of wine for Noidelecha, and then for Rachem Noah, and then for Hatayv Ameitim. So that was 10. 3 cups before the meal, 3 cups of wine in the middle of the meal, and then 4 cups for the Brachos Hamazon. So my impression from the Gemara is there's no violation of Enos Mitzvahs Chavilos if you're going to say the whole Brachos Hamazon with 1 cup of wine. It's all one mitzvah, Brachos Hamazon, with 4 brachas. But if you want to, by the oval, by the Sudas Avra, we recommend to know Sheikh al-Oivid the Yain le-Mari Nefesh. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu created wine. In the history books, they say how long in the history of mankind, how long did they have this institution of wine? So they say it's around 6,000 years old. That's from the days of Adam Rishon. The Adam Rishon already knew. Noach got drunk. That was the Mabul. That was 10 generations after Adam Rishon. But already there was wine already in the days of Adam Rishon. That's how the history books say. It's 6,000 years old that people figured out already. Adam Rishon figured out how to make wine. So they had the last 4 were the 4 cups of the Brachos Hamazon. So my impression was whenever you want to bench, if you want, you can say the benching over 4 cups of wine. You don't have to. It's all one Brachos Hamazon. You can say everything over 1 cup of wine. But if you want to, you can have 4 cups of wine. I would think that what it means is that you drink someone else. So when do you drink the wine? In between Hazanas HaKol and Noidelecha? I think so. I don't know. I have to look on the Rishonim what they say. My impression is that they, like on Pesach night, we say 4, the Gemara says, in the end of Pesach, we say 4 Brachos al HaKos. You say Kiddush al HaKos, you say Asher Ge'olonu al HaKos, then you say Brachos Hamazon al HaKos, and then you say Brachos Hashir. The last one is Brachos Hashir. What is the Brachos Hashir? So the Gemara has a machlokes. Which bracha is it? Is it Yehalalucha that we usually say at the end of Hallel? So on Pesach night you say all of Hallel. So you say at the end of Hallel you say Halalucha. So what's the chiddush that you say Halalucha? So Tosfos explains all year long, whenever you finish Hallel, you say Hallelujah. Tosfos says, no, all year long the Mishnah Megillah says that the Bracha of Hallelujah was instituted by the Anshe Knesset Agdola. True, the Bracha from the days of the early Chachamim, the beginning of the Baisheni period, Anshe Knesset Agdola, but it was instituted as an optional Bracha if you want to. Makom shenagu levarach yivarach, makom shenagu shelo levarach, Hallelujah lo yivarach. But on Pesach night, that's a takana. You have to have Birchas Hashir, even if the minhag hamakom is that you don't say Hallelujah all year long. On Rosh Chodesh and whenever you say Hallel, you don't say Hallelujah. But on Pesach night, you have to say Hallelujah. So one opinion in the Gemara is that it's Hallelujah. The other opinion is that it's Yishtabach. So the Hayyadam quotes in the name of the Vilna Gaon that all year long, they told us when we were in elementary school, they shouldn't have told us the secret. They told us the secret that if you come to shul late in the morning, you can abridge the Psukkah de Zimra. You can say Baruch Shama Ashrei and Yishtabach and catch up with the Tzibur. If they wouldn't have told us that, maybe we would have been more careful to come on time and not abridge the Psukkah de Zimra. But they told us the secret. So what about Shabbos? Also, you can abridge the Psukkah de Zimra and say Baruch Shama Ashrei Yishtabach. So the Chayyadin quotes from the Vilna Gaon. He was mishpacha with the Vilna Gaon. They were mechutanim. So he quotes from the Chayyadin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. You can't abridge it because the bracha of Yishtabach on Shabbos and Yom Tov begins with Nishmas Kol Chai. Because the Gemara calls it Birchas Hashir. You start with Nishmas Kol Chai and you end off with Yishtabach. So that's one long bracha. Our minhag is that usually you have a new Bal Tefillah takes over Bashar Chanad or Hamelech, or some had, and they have all the minhagim of the Maharam Rutenberg, all the old Yekish minhagim, that on Pesach Shavuos Sukkos, you have a siddur. Oh. Thank you. Let me see. Has Shabbos Digga davening also? Mm-hmm. Got to find a place. Mincha Shabbos Nafshi. That's later. On Shabbos, we usually have the Bal Tefillah begin with Shochenad. Then on Yom Tovim, where do they begin? Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, you begin Hamelech. To begin Hakel B'Satzumas Uzecha. I don't remember already. So on Pesach Shavuos Sukkos, they would begin with a different word. I forgot already which one. They do that in Goy. No. Hakel B'Satzumas Uzecha. Hagol B'Chod Shemach Hagibel HaNetzach Ner Secha. So Hakel was for Pesach, Hagadol was for Shavuos, and Hagibah was for Sukkos, and Hamelech was for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur.
Right.
Did they do that in Brachos?
Yeah.
They do?
Yeah.
Oh. I guess I was never there on Yom Tov in the morning. Once in a while I daven there Shabbos. Yom Tov I rarely daven there. So the Chazanim start in the middle. So the word tzaddikim, Hasidish tzaddikim, they quote the, I think there was one of Chassidish, Moshe Leib Sasava. My father had the Sefer in his library, so I remember looking at it. So when he would be the Bal Tefillah on Shabbos and Yom Tov, he would start from the beginning of the Bracha, Nishmas Kol Chai. Not what he starts in the middle of a paragraph, in the middle of a sentence. Havel B'Satzumas Uzecha is the middle of a sentence. Alechan Shabechan Foyachan Bracha Shimka. It's all in the middle of a sentence. So why should you start in the middle of a sentence? Also in the middle of a sentence. Everything in the middle of a sentence. So there were Talmidei Chachamim who would be Bali Tefillah. They would start from the beginning of Nishmas Kol Chai. That's the beginning of the Bracha. The Magen Avraham quotes that the minhag of the Arizal is that in Aseres Emei Tshuva you say Shir Amalos in between Yishtabach and Kaddish. So he thinks that it's not proper. He thinks that it's a hepsik. because you're not allowed to talk in between Yishtabach and Yotzerar. Not allowed to be mafsik. There's when the Jewish people had an army that was run by Rabbanim, so if they would go to a Milchemes Rishus, now they're not interested in any Milchemes Rishus. Just if you have no choice, you have a Milchemes Mitzvah, you have to fight. But the Milchemes Rishus we don't have today. You can't wage Milchemes Rishus unless you have authorization from the Bez Nagadol. So if there's no Bez Nagadol, there's no Milchemes Rishus today. It's only Milchemes Mitzvah. So when you have Milchemes Rishus, so the Mashiach Muhammad has to announce Mihu Isha Yori Bracha Leva V'Yelech V'Yoshev L'Beiso Panyamos B'Milchama, and so on. So the Gemara has the Mishnah has a Machlokes Hatanoim in Perek Mashiach Muhammad. That's the end of Sota. So there's a Machlokes Hatanoim. What does that mean? Mihu Isha Yori Bracha Leva. So some Tanoim, most of the Rishonim don't accept this lahalacha. But one of the Tanoim says, Yori me'averish biyodai. If the fellow, everyone gets a letter from the draft board, they want you to come to serve in the army. And then there's a committee that has to check to see if you're fit for the army. So most of the Tanoim say, Yori beracha leva means he's going to fall to pieces. He doesn't have the stability. He's not strong enough, physically not strong enough, or he's mentally is not capable of fighting a war. He's going to run away. He's not going to be successful in battle. So you don't take him in the army. And there's a minority opinion that most of the Rishonim say we do not paskin like Yori Ma'averi should be other. That if the fellow's a Bal Avera, so you don't take him in the army. At the end of the years, the Volozhin Yeshiva lasted for 90 years. At the end of the 90 years, the last couple of years, they had a lot of maskilim who came to learn in Volozhin. They want to go to university, but they want to have some intellectual excitement. But the Goyim wouldn't take them into the Goyish university. They had no choice, so they went to Volozhin. So they had Bialik. He wasn't from the most observant Talmidim that they had. They had to expel him. They had to kick him out from Volozhin. And they had all kinds of people who didn't belong in yeshiva. So on Purim, they would put on a Purim spiel. So one year they were making fun of the whole Gemara, where the Gemara visualizes an army. So they have a whole draft board, and they ask them, did you ever eat any non-kosher food? Yeah, once in a while they did. They can't take him in the army. They didn't wash until it's yadayim. He didn't say Bracha Achrayna. Can't take him in the army. Anyone who did anything that's wrong, can't take him in the army. So the whole spiel was that they left with only 3 people in the army: the Shagasaria, the Vilna Gaon, and the Nitziv. That was the army. So it was so funny. So the students were rolling a laughter. They were rolling on the floor. And the Nitziv was sitting and listening to the whole spiel. He said, no, what's the end of the story? He said, that's the end. He said, no, the end is that we won the war. If you take the non-observant people, we're not so sure if you're going to win the war. If you only take the Shagasaria and the Vilna Gaon and the Nitziv, we're going to win the war. So the Mishnah has a machlokes hatanoim. What if the fellow only does averes the rabbanon? He doesn't mess around with dinim deraisa. He only does averes the rabbanon. A kohen marries a chalutza. That's only the rabbanon. Kohen not allowed to marry a grusha. That's a pasuk of chumash. Kohen not allowed to marry a chalutza. The Gemara in Yevamah said that's only the rabbanon. So what if the fellow is careful? He only does averes the rabbanon. So that's a machlokes hatanoim. Most of the Rishonim don't paskin the whole din. Even if he does averes deraisa, we do take him in the army. We don't accept that Tana's opinion. La halacha l'maisa we don't accept. But within that sheet there, so there's a machlokes. What if he doesn't avera the rabbanon? So the Gemara gives an example of one who doesn't avera the rabbanon. Hasach ben tefillah letefillah. He talks in between tefillah shal yad and tefillah shal rosh. Why is that an avera the rabbanon? If he wouldn't have talked in between shal yad and shal rosh, he wouldn't have to say 2 brachas. He would only say l'haniach tefillin. Maybe say al mitzvahs tefillin on the shal rosh. But if he talks in between shal yad and shal rosh, then he has to say 2 brachas on the shal rosh. That's a Rabbi Tam learns, but he has to say 2 brachas on the shal rosh. So that's called gorim bracha she'ein tzricha. Garim Bracha Shein Tzricha is not the same as Bracha L'Vatala. Bracha L'Vatala means just Hashak on Libidvar is not eating anything. That's a Bracha L'Vatala. But here, if you talk in between the Shal Yad and the Shal Rosh, then the din is that you have to say an extra bracha. But you could have covered both of the tefillin with less bracha. So that's called Garim Bracha Shein Tzricha. So that's an example. So that's what the Magen Avraham quotes the Gemara. Asach ben yishtabach liyotzera raverehi biyada v'chosra aleha mi'orchei ha'molchama. If you all like that Tana, that even an avera derabanan also is called mihu isha yori v'racha levav yelech v'yoshav lebeisa because yori me'avera isha biyada. That's an avera derabanan. So that's the Tana that the Magen Avraham says that it's not right. That's minig svart is that you say shir amalas. Minig svart they follow the Arizal, but minig Ashkenaz is that you don't say shir amalas. So some Rabbanan felt okay. So I won't be mafsik in between Yishtabach and Yotzer, or I'll say shir amalas in between, right before Yishtabach. So I won't talk in between Yishtabach and Yotzer. So they pointed out that that's worse. To say that the people felt, what's the problem? He's saying Psukkah Zimmer, so many prokim from Tehillim. So they say another parak from Tehillim, Shir Malas. That fits in over there, yeah. But you're going to say Shir Malas right before Yishtabach. That's in the middle of a bracha. The bracha begins with Nishmas Kol Chai, and it goes on for a couple of pages. So the Chayorim quoted from the Vilna Gaon. That's one long bracha. That's a bigger hefsek. The talk in between Yishtabach and Yotzeror is one avera. To talk in the middle of a bracha, it's a bigger hefsek. So others wanted to solve the problem. They didn't want to forego saying Shir Amalas. They wanted to say the Shir Amalas. So they would say the Shir Amalas after Oz Yoshir, before Nishmas Kol Chai. You say somebody prokem in Tehillim. So you say another parak in Tehillim. You say Shir Amalas there. So what's so bad about that? So that's what. And on the side of the big Shulchan Aruch, they have the Ha'aris of the Dogel Mervava. The Nadi Behuda has Ha'aris that he wrote on the side of the page. So they printed it in the big Shulchan Aruch. They have it here in Eben Ezer also. Dogel Mervava, the Ha'aris of the Nadi Behuda. So he says he doesn't understand what was bothering the Magen Avraham about saying Shir Amalas in between Yishtabach and Yotzer Or. The Rambam says that after he finished saying Yishtabach and the daily davening, there are communities where they say Oz Yoshir there. Instead of saying Oz Yoshir before you say Yishtabach, they had the practice to say it in between Yishtabach and Yotzer Or. Why didn't they say it in the middle of Psukkah Zimra? So Rav Soloveitchik explained because Psukkah Zimra we said in Baruch Shama, Shiri David Abdecha Nahalelchan Shabechacha. Shiri David Abdecha is Tehillim, and Oz Yoshir is in Chamishul Chumshei Torah. So it doesn't belong in the middle of Psukkah Zimra. But it's a nice shira, so you want to say more psukkah de zimra. So he said they had the practice. They said shir amalas after Yishtabach, before you start Yotzer Or. So you see, there's nothing wrong with saying something after Yishtabach. So what's and we add on Oz Yoshir in the middle of the psukkah de zimra before you say Yishtabach. So why can't you say? So I understand why you can't say shir amalas right before Yishtabach, because that's in the middle of the bracha. The bracha begins with Nishmas Kol Chai. Why not say Shir Amalas after Yishtabach, like the Rambam says there are communities where they say Oz Yoshir then? Why can't you say Shir Amalas right after Oz Yoshir, before Nishmas Kol Chai? You're not saying in the middle of a bracha, and you're saying another parak and Tehillim, so it's so there. So the Sefer Emek Bracha, there was a Talmid Chacham who was born in Brisk, and he learned Barav Elvola for quite a few years. All the other Talmidim who learned Barav Elvola in Europe came from the other yeshivas. They had a quota, depending on how many students there were in the yeshivas. So they allowed so many students to come from the Meir Yeshiva and so on. From Radin, each yeshiva had a quota how many they could have. But he wasn't from the yeshivas. He lived in Brisk. So his name is Pomeranchik, Rabbi Pomeranchik. So he wrote over a lot of things that he heard from Rav Elvola. You know, it's a very nice style, very similar to Rav Elvola's style. So he says the different prokim Tehillim, we probably spoke about it before Rosh Hashanah, different prokim Tehillim are different types. So some of the Pirkei Tehillim are lessons in life, tells us how we should lead our lives, how we should act. Other prokim Tehillim are telling you history of the Jewish people. Tzias Mitzrayim, Maimin HaSinai, Nisim and Aflos, and the Midbar. Some of the prokem are tefillas, and some of the prokem are shevach. All kinds of prokem and tilim. You have when you have a choila, so you don't say ashrei, you say a perik and tilim. That has to do with refuah. So, true, you can add on things to Psukkah de Zimri. You can add on in between Yishtabach and Yotzer, or you can add on to say Oz Yashir before Yishtabach or because Yashir is a Shira. We're praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu that He gave us a Yeshua on the occasion of Kriyas Yamsuf, and the Mitzrayim all drowned. So we're praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it fits in before Yishtabach, in the middle of Psukkah, and it fits in after. You're continuing, like you say, Oz Yashir after Yishtabach. So you can say other Pirkei Tilim after Yishtabach also, after praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Shir Amalus Mimamakim is Bakoshes, it's Trinas. It's not Shevach. So it doesn't belong. It certainly doesn't belong in the middle of Nishmas, right before Yishtabach. That's the middle of a long bracha. And it doesn't belong before Nishmas Kal Chai, because Psukkah de Zim is supposed to have Shevach for HaKadosh Baruch. Shevach Haidoya. Not supposed to have Bakoshes. So that's why it doesn't belong. That's when the Magen Avraham says it doesn't belong. It doesn't belong on a Seres and Mechua. Minig Ashkenaz is that you don't say Shir Malus. That's a minig Sfard. But because there's so many communities where people are picking up everybody else's minhagim, so they thought that that was their minig. So how did we start off? We start off by saying there's a din of Enois and Mitzvahs Chavilos. The Gemara says you're not allowed a mashkin shtei soites ka'achas. That's Gemara soita Daf Ches. I remember that it's Daf Ches because there's a mince print in the Magen Avraham. The Magen Avraham says that it's Daf Hey. So it's really a mistake. It's Daf Ches. And the Gemara has there ein roitzim shnei abadim ke'echad. If you're going to have all the people who have an Eved Ivri, because the Mishnah says they used to do Ritzias Eved Ivri on Rosh Chodesh Adar. B'echad Adar roitzim es ha'abadim. You don't do the Ritzia the last day of Sheish, when he's about to be Yotze L'Cheres, at Tzeis HaKochavim, the end of the Sheish. You do the Ritzia a couple of months before. If he's holding by the end of the 6 years, then you do the Ritzia. You do all the Ritzias on Rosh Chodesh Adar. So there's a din of Einois and Mitzvahs Chavilos. So included in that din is that you can't say, let's say, Amatzoi Shabbos. A person doesn't have so much wine, so he wants to say Birchas Hamazon of Shaloshudas, and he wants to be Yotzei Havdalah. He doesn't have enough wine for 2 cups of wine, so he finishes Shaloshudas. He wants to bench HaKos, but if he's going to bench HaKos, he won't have any wine for Havdalah. So let him say both the Birchas Hamazon and the Havdalah over a cup of wine. So the Gemara says you're not allowed to. That's a violation of the din. And then it's a mitzvahs chavilos. The problem is that we do it all the time. Because we say we bench by Shaloshudas, and it's already late. It's the middle of the night. After it says Sakachavim, so you're not allowed to eat before you say Havdalah. So nobody drinks the wine. Strictly speaking, you're allowed to drink the wine, because the wine of the cup that you're benched over is considered a part of the meal. It's considered as if it belongs to the Shaloshudas. In fact, there is an opinion that we don't pass like this. Let's say whenever you bench, after a meal, you bench HaKos. So there was an opinion in the Rishonim that you don't have to say Ala Gefen, Ral Priya Gefen at the end, because the Bracha Achroina on the wine is covered with the Birchas Hamazon that you said before you drank the wine. Because the wine belongs to the meal. The wine of the cup of Birchas Hamazon is considered a hemshach of the meal. So you got to say Bar Piagafen even in the middle of the meal. But then you don't have to say Al HaGefen, Al Piagafen, because it's covered with the Birchas Hamazon. We don't follow that sheet that we do say Al HaGefen. But strictly speaking, instead of Shulchan Aruch, it is permissible to drink the wine, even though you didn't say Havdalah yet, because this is considered a hemshach of the... It's not considered a violation of eating or drinking before Havdalah, because this is considered as if it still belongs to the Shaloshudas. So how come we don't drink the wine? So the Magen Avraham says why? Since all year long we often will bench mezuman and we won't bench HaKos. A lot of times the boys eat in the cafeteria, they eat lunch, and they have 3 people who ate bread, so they bench mezuman. They never bench HaKos all week long. Even on Shabbos, a lot of times people eat together, they don't bench HaKos. Sheva Brachos, they always bench HaKos, but a lot of times we don't. So we demonstrate that we hold that it's not that important, that benching HaKos is not that important. It's really not right. We really ought to always bench HaKos, at least when you have a mezuman. Even when you don't have a mezuman, says the Shulchan Aruch, there's a whole discussion, maybe you should also bench HaKos. But if you have a mezuman, for sure, more correct is that you should bench HaKos. So since our practice is very often we'll bench mezuman and we won't have a kos, so we demonstrate that the kos is not really part of the meal. So therefore, if you're going to drink the cup of wine that you recited Brachos Hamazon over by Chadashot, going to drink it before Havdalah, we don't say that it's considered a hemshech of the Chadashot, because we usually all year long we bench mezuman without a kos of wine. So therefore, it'll be a violation of drinking wine before Havdalah.
Don't you have to have mezuman to bench with wine?
Not really. In Shulchan Aruch, there's a discussion that there are those who say you should bench even b'yechidus over a cup of wine. Or if you have mezuman, so a lot of times you have a mezuman in the cafeteria. A lot of boys are eating together. 3 boys had bread, or 2 boys had bread, 1 had a filling meal. So they also bench mezuman. They bench mezuman, they don't have a cup of wine. You don't have to have 10. If you have 3, you can have. So because all year long we're very mizalzal on this, we will often bench mezuman and will not bench HaKos. And we demonstrate, that's what the Magen Avraham said, we demonstrate that we hold la halacha that Brachos Hamazon doesn't need a kos, even if you're benching mezuman. So therefore it's not considered part of Chadashot. It's not considered part of the meal that I just finished eating. So therefore we consider a violation of eating before Havdalah. So we bench by Chadashot HaKos. No one drinks the wine. Then you're going to say Havdalah later on that cup of wine. Then you're going to drink it. So that's a violation of Chavilos. I had a cup of wine and I used it both for benching and for Havdalah.
Don't they quote from Rav Chaim that you could start Chadashot after Shkia because it's Tosefes Shabbos? Yeah. So why would it matter if it's before or after you start Chadashot? I mean, after you finish Chadashot, it's still Tosefes Shabbos. Why can't you drink it then?
You're allowed to eat after Shkia because you didn't eat Chadashot yet. You want to fulfill the mitzvah, but after I finish the Chadashot, then you're not supposed to eat. After you finish eating Chadashot and you bench, you're not supposed to eat. So that's the question. Are you allowed to drink the wine from the cup of wine that you benched over? So the pashtus is that yes. But the Magen Avraham says since all year long we are in the practice of benching a lot of times without the yayin. So therefore by us, the yayin from the cup of benching is not considered a chelik of the meal. So that's why we don't drink the wine. That's why the meaning is we don't drink the wine. If you have a Sheva Brachos, so then whenever you have a Sheva Brachos, we always bench over a cup of wine. And the Chas and Kala always drink. So they say if you have a Sheva Brachos by Chadashot, so if Shabbos is the last day, if they got married on Sunday, and Shabbos is the 7th day of the Shivas Mei HaMishta, so after Shabbos is over, so you don't say any Sheva Brachos anymore. So if you got a bench late at night, the Shivas Mei HaMishta are over already. So then you can't say you can't say the Sheva Brachos. It's too late. But it's the middle of Shivas Mei HaMishta. Not that Shabbos is the last day. It's the middle of Shivas Mei HaMishta. The next day they're going to have Sheva Brachos again. So the question is, when you had Sheva Brachos by Chadashot, can you drink the wine? Because the wine considered a chelik of the meal? So usually the wine by us is not considered chelik of the meal because we often bench without a cup of wine. But whenever there's Sheva Brachos, we always have a cup of wine. We always have for the Chas and Kala. You never go to a Sheva Brachos where they're not going to have a cup of wine for the Chas and Kala. The Rambam said if wine is not available, so you say the Sheva Brachos, you don't say 7, you say 6. The 7th bracha is Bar Piagofen. So if the wine is not available, so you use beer. If you don't have Chamar Medina, so you say the brachas without the wine and without the beer. Okay. But if you have wine, then you use the wine. And even on Motzei Shabbos, and it's still in the middle of Shivas Me'amishta, it's not a shaila that this Shivas Me'amishta are up. It's not up. They got married on a Wednesday. They didn't get married on a Sunday. So you can say Sheva Brachos.
If they get married on Sunday, the last Sheva Brachos is on Shabbos?
Yeah.
No, not next Sunday.
If they get married on Sunday, so Sunday is the first day of Shivas Me'amishta.
Oh, okay.
Then Shabbos is the seventh day. So if they're going to bench late after the Shivas Me'amishta, after Tzeis HaKochavim, so it's better the Shivas Me'amishta are up. So you can't say any Sheva Brachos then. So let's say they got married on Wednesday. That's not an issue. But the issue is that the Magen Avraham said that we never drink the wine of the cup that we bench over by Chavilos, because all week long, all year long, we often bench mizum and we don't have wine. So even though now by Chavilos we're benching over a cup of wine, the cup of wine you can't really consider it a hemshech of the Chavilos. You finish Chavilos already. The wine is separate. It doesn't belong to the meal. But by Chas and Kala, that's what the Chaim said, Chas Kala, you always have a cup of wine. So they should have Sheva Brachos over wine, and the Chas and Kala should drink the wine. That's the practice. Chas and Kala drink the wine. So again, the Magen Avraham quotes the Prisha. Prisha is a commentary on the bottom of the page in the tour, where the Prisha says when you have Sheva Brachos, you should fill up the 2 cups of wine before the benching, and then you bench over the 1 cup of wine, and then after you finish the benching, then you should use the other cup of wine for the Sheva Brachos. So the Magen Avraham thinks that this is Shaloi Kedin. He thinks that is a violation of Einois Mitzvahs Chavilos, and he quotes the Gemara in Sotah Daf Ches that if you have all the people are lined up, whoever has an Eved Ivri who's going to be Yotzei B'Sheish in the coming couple of months. So they come to Bezdin on this Sunday morning, but everyone's going to be waiting online, and one after the other, we're going to knock them all off, take care of the Ritzia. There's one expert who knows how to drill a hole without making too much pain. He's going to do the Ritzia. So the Gemara said that's a violation of Chavilos. So the Magen Avraham says to fill up the 2 cups before the benching, he thinks is a violation. You should only fill up the cup for the benching. And after they finish benching, then you should fill up the 2nd cup.
What about Yom Tov? If Yom Tov is on Shabbos, Zikri use only 1 kodesh, Kiddush and Havdalah.
Yes.
So they were not having 2 kodeshes.
So the Gemara raises that issue. The Gemara Pesachim, on that the last paragraph, the Gemara raised that issue. That ought to be a violation of Chavilos. He's saying both Kiddush and Havdalah, Kiddush for Shabbos and Havdalah for Shabbos and Kiddush for Yom Tov, over 1 cup of wine. So the Gemara says, but it's related. It's related issues. Kedusha Sayyim, Kedusha Shabbos, Kedusha Yom Tov, they're related. So that we don't require that you should dafka have 2 different cups of wine. Kach tiknu chachamim, because it's related. Like we say Havdalah, so we say Borim Yoreh and Borim Minim B'Samim, also over a cup of wine. The one is reciting Havdalah is not supposed to put down the cup of wine when he says Borim Yoreh, when he says Borim Minim B'Samim. He's supposed to hold a cup of wine in his left hand and then hold the B'Samim, or hold the candle in his right hand, or look at his fingers with his right hand. But he should be holding the cup of wine. If he puts it down, he's not saying the Borim Minim B'Samim and the Borim Yoreh HaKos. The Chacham made a takonet that it should be considered part of the Havdalah. Borim Minim B'Samim, Borim Yoreh is considered part of the Havdalah.
Ready. Legabi Chavilos. L'man damer that shchit is not a matter but a mitzvah. Would we require like a hefsek between shechting each individual chicken? Like how long is the hefsek?
Everybody agrees that shchit is a matter. Nobody disagrees with that. I mean, is it a mitzvah?
In addition, yeah, correct.
If you hold that it's a mitzvah, that's an interesting question. The shochet stands and he shechts for an hour to have on the assembly line. That's an interesting question. Why isn't that a violation of Chavilos? Well, that would take forever. That would take forever to supply America with so much. Good question. Why is that a violation?
So why taka is it not a problem that we make Havdalah on the same coast that we use?
It is a problem. What did you accomplish? If he said the Brachos HaMazon over a cup of wine, you don't drink the wine. So the Gemara says, it's only called the Bracha HaKos if you taste some of it. But if you don't taste it till after you say the Havdalah, then you said both the Brachos HaMazon and the Havdalah over 1 cup of wine. So that's not right. So if you don't have enough of 2 cups of wine, so the Gemara says maybe if you have no choice, maybe you're allowed to violate Chavilos. But we do have a choice. We have another bottle of wine. What's wrong? Take another bottle of wine. So there is one opinion in Tosfos that there is a concept of Bracha HaKos min HaTorah, even if you don't drink the wine. You do accomplish something. For the Gemara, it seems that if you're going to say Bracha HaKos and no one's going to drink the wine, no Jewish person is going to drink the wine, then it's not called a Bracha HaKos. So there's one opinion in Tosfos, no, that Hamvorach Tzorch Sheyitam, that's Midrabanan. But to say Kiddush and Havdalah ala Yayin, that's their Eisen. There was such an opinion. There is a Gemara where the early Bali Ataisus, the early Rishonim, interpreted the Gemara to say that if one is a Nazir, he took a net in Naziris not to drink Yayin, Tumah Tiglachas and Yayin, Avishloshah Minim Asurim, the Nazir, Tumah Tiglachas and Yayin. So a person is a Nazir, he's not allowed to drink wine, but Yen Kiddush v'Havdalah, he is allowed to drink. There is such a sheet in Rishon. Tosfos thinks that it's utterly ridiculous for various reasons, but that's the way they read the Gemara. Tosfos says, no, the Gemara should be read b'tniyah, not b'nichusa. The early Rishonim read it b'nichusa, that the Nazir is allowed to drink wine for Kiddush and Havdalah. It's supposed to, is a Nazir allowed to drink wine b'tniyah, not supposed to be b'nichusa. You have to learn with the right niggin. If you learn with the wrong niggin, you're going to come up with the wrong maskana. So you did, according to that opinion, you accomplished something, even though you didn't drink any wine right after the benching. You accomplished something on the level of the Raisa. You recited Brachos HaMazon al HaKos. But you're still in violation of Chavilos. And according to many, you didn't accomplish anything, not on the level of the Raisa, not on the level of the Rabbanah. He said Brachos HaMazon over a cup of wine. You didn't taste it, so no one's Yotze. So you weren't Yotze the Hiddur, Brachos HaMazon al HaYayin. It's a difficult practice that we have. So that's a big machlokes. Usually, let's say you say Kiddush al Yayin. So we follow Beis Hillel. They say Bar Piagafen first, then you say Kiddush. Havdalah also we say Bar Piagafen first, then you say the Havdalah. When you get married, they say Bar Piagafen and Bichas Harrison afterwards. Then when you have Nisuin under the chuppah, also you say Bar Piagafen. What do you do when you have Nisuin? What do you do when you have Sheva Brachos? What do you do when you have Sheva Brachos? Do you say Bar Piagafen? When you bench, that's the exception to the rule. When you bench, even Beis Hillel agree with Beis Shammai that you bench first, then you say Bar Piagafen. So Tosfos and Brachos ask, why is benching different from every other time? When you have a bris, they say Bar Piagafen, then it's Asher Kiddush, you did me better. I always say Bar Piagafen first. Machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So we pass like Beis Hillel, they always say Bar Piagafen first. By Erison, by Nisuin, by a bris, whenever there's a Bracha al HaKos, you say the Bar Piagafen first, except for benching. Why is benching different? So Tosfos explains why. A little easy Tosfos and Brachos. Tosfos explains why. Because if you say Bar Piagafen first, you won't accomplish anything. You're going to have to say Bar Piagafen again after you finish the benching in order to drink the wine. Because Brachos HaMazon is a declaration of Hesach Hadas from eating. You say, I finished eating, I'm not going to eat anymore. So if he said Bar Piagafen over the cup of wine first, and then he's going to say the Brachos HaMazon when you bench Mezumin together, benching together. So the Brachos HaMazon is a declaration of Hesach Hadas from drinking any wine. So this is going to have to say another Bar Piagafen after he says the Brachos HaMazon. So what do you gain by saying the Bar Piagafen first? So Taisa sounds like that's the one and only exception to the rule. That Brachos Hamazon inside the Bar Piagofen first. Brachos Hamazon inside the Bar Piagofen at the end. So that's a shaila when you have a Sheva Brachos. When do we say? We say Brachos Hamazon, that we have the other cup of wine, and we say the Sheva Brachos, and when do you say Bar Piagofen? So if you look in the Knesset Hagdolah, the Hagdolah is a likut of early Achronim on Shulchan Aruch, on the Tur. The Beis Yosef is a likut of whatever Rabbi Yosef Kara had. He lived in the 1500s. So he has a likut of all the Rishonim and all Achronim that he had available there. And the Knesset Hagdolah is a bigger likut. He has more. So the Knesset Hagdolah quotes different practices. You say the Bar Piagofen, a normal Sheva Bracha, you say after the Olamaya Chasreinu, after the benching is over. So whenever you bench HaKos, you say Bar Piagofen after the benching. But now you're going to say Sheva Bracha. So Sheva Bracha say Bar Piagofen before the Sheva Bracha. So you should say it in between. You should say the Bar Piagofen after the Kos, after the Brachos Hamazon is finished, before the Sheva Brachas. Or do you say no? The common practice is that they say the Bar Piagofen after all the Sheva Brachas. Why? What's the chiluf in Minhagim? So these are the two opinions. The Rambam sounds like he said in Hilchas Brachas that usually Brachos Hamazon consists of 4 brachas. But when you have a couple who just got married, then you add on another 6 brachas, and the benching now has 10 brachas. So Tosfos said the klal is whenever you bench, HaKos say Bar Piagofen at the end of the benching, at the end of all of the 10 brachas. According to the Rambam, you should really say the Bar Piagofen at the end. That's what we do. But according to the Rambam, you should say all the 10 brachas over 1 cup of wine. So how come we have 2 cups of wine? The answer is we're choshes for the other shita. The other shita holds that they're 2 different units. Brachos Hamazon is 1 unit, and then Sheva Brachos is another unit. So that would be a violation of Chavilos if you would have both the benching and the Sheva Brachos over the same cup of wine. So we have 2 cups of wine. But according to the Rambam, shouldn't it have been over 1 cup of wine? It's one long that. The answer is, but the Gemara says on Chesam and Beis, they would have 4 cups of wine for benching. 1 cup for Hazonas HaKol, 1 cup for Noy Delucha, 1 cup for Rachem, and 1 cup for Atayva Meitim. So you see, whenever it's one long benching, if you want, you can have 1 cup of wine. If you want, you can have 4 cups of wine. So according to the Rambam, true, it's a longer version of the benching. The benching now has 10 brachas, but if you wanted, you could have had 10 cups of wine. If you want, you could have 2 cups of wine. According to the Balei HaTosfos, that the 2 different units, you have to have at least 2 cups of wine. If you want to have 10 cups of wine is also good. So we go l'chumrah in both directions. We go l'chumrah to require 2 separate cups of wine, 1 cup of wine for the benching, and 1 cup of wine for the Sheva Brachas. But then we go l'chumrah to save the Bar Piagofen till the end, instead of saying it in the middle. Like many Kehillas have that meaning, that Knesset Hagdolah and Eben Ezer quotes that, they would say Bar Piagofen at a Sheva Brachas after the benching is over, before they recited the next 6 brachas. Because by benching, you say the bracha Bar Piagofen after, by every other bracha HaKos, say the bracha before. So we want to satisfy the Rambam's opinion, so we want to satisfy both opinions. So we go l'chumrah in both directions. You have 2 cups of wine, but you say the Bar Piagofen at the end of everything, not in the middle. Tosfos also has 2 opinions. The way we have the practice, in the days of the Tanoim, there used to be a year pause in between the Eris and the Nisuin. They would do Kiddushin, and then the Chosim would have a year and a Wednesday to do the Nisuin. In the days of the Gemara, the Chosim would pay for the wedding. He would pay for the meal. So he has to earn some money. You got to give him a year. He has to buy clothing, he has to get an apartment, he has to get a job. So you give him a year to, if he doesn't do the Nisuin before the year is up, he's Mechayiv Mizanis Ishtay. Because we don't give him so much time. But the guy made a takana that you have to have Nisuin right away. So that's a shaila. How long a pause is there between Bar Piagov and Averisin and the Nisuin? No pause at all.
Right.
No pause at all, according to the Takanas Agani. So do you say twice Bar Piagofen or you say once Bar Piagofen? So our practice is we say twice Bar Piagofen. We say Bar Piagofen before Birchas Erisin. Then we say again Bar Piagofen before Birchas Nisuin. You look in the Mordechai has the two minhagim. Whether you say twice Bar Piagofen or once. On Pesach night also, we have Arba Koises. So the first cup of wine you have to say Bar Piagofen, because on Erev Pesach you weren't drinking any wine. The third cup of wine is Birchas Hamazon. They have to say Bar Piagofen, because the Bracha Bar Piagofen, they decided at the beginning of the Seder with a cup of Kiddush doesn't cover the wine that you're going to drink after Birchas Hamazon. Birchas Hamazon, a declaration of Hesach Hadas of eating, so you're not eating anything anymore. So if you want to drink the kos, the third kos of Birchas Hamazon, you got to say Bar Piagofen. So the first and the third koses, we understand why there's a bracha. What about the second and the fourth kos? Do you say Bar Piagofen? So that's Machloikes, Sfardim and Ashkenazim. The Sfardim only say twice Bar Piagofen on Pesach night, the first cup and the third cup. The second cup is covered with the Bar Piagofen of the first cup, and the fourth cup is covered with the Bar Piagofen of the third cup.
So they only make two?
Only two. On the Sfardim and Shulchan Aruch says like only two. And the Ramah writes that the Ashkenazim say 4 times Bar Piagofen on Pesach night. So why did the Ashkenazim say 4 times? There was a Hesach Hadas. We know from the very outset we're going to have 4 cups of wine. The third cup you have no choice. The first cup you have no choice. You have to say Bar Piagofen. The third cup is Birchas Hamazon. So the Birchas Hamazon, a declaration of Hesach Hadas from eating. The first and the third cups you have to say Bar Piagofen, but the second and the fourth, why do the Ashkenazim say a bracha on that? So there are 2 versions. If you look there, the end of Shochem, there were 2 versions. The Meforshim on the Rif talk about that. The Ran and the others talk about that. So one version is that it takes so long, especially now. The children all give their pshetlach and their Rosh Tevis and the Gematria. It takes forever. From the time that you get from Kiddush till Asher Gyalonu, takes a long, long time. So it's a Hesach Hadas from eating. And then the same thing, this is very questionable. All the Gematrios and the Rosh Tevis and all the pshetlach, that's always on everything before the meal. After the meal, the children usually don't say anything. They don't have any pshetlach to say. on Halal and the Birchas Hamazon, nothing to say there. So the question is, why do you say in the 4th cup of wine? So I say also, it takes so long between the 3rd cup and the 4th cup, it's a Hesach Hadas. But other Rishonim say, no, it's not because of Hesach Hadas. Not so much Hesach Hadas. That's the halacha. Whenever you have a bracha al HaKos, you have to say Bar Piagofen, even though it's not needed mitam osa lehanis benala mazay b'lay bracha. It's not that you need the Bar Piagofen because of Birchas Hanen. Birchas Hanen is covered with the first Bar Piagofen. That he said it should really cover the 2nd cup of wine. And the Bar Piagofen over the 3rd cup benching should really cover the 4th cup, and it does cover. In Hilchas Birchas Hanen, and it does cover. But that's the halacha. Whenever you're going to say a bracha al HaKos, you have to start off with the Bar Piagofen. So that's a question. If that's the pshat and the meaning of the Ashkenazim, then we understand by a chuppah why you have Bar Piagofen 5 minutes after the first Bar Piagofen. There's a Hesach Hadas. They say Bar Piagofen over the kosher Erisin, and then you say Bar Piagofen over the kosher Nisuin. That's what the Mordechai has at 2 minhagim, whether you say twice Bar Piagofen by the chuppah once. So the Ashkenazim say twice. Like on Pesach night, they say 4 times, even though the 2nd cup and the 4th cup really shouldn't need a Bar Piagofen, should be covered with the Bar Piagofen is said over the 1st cup and over the 3rd cup. But it's another koshel bracha. So koshel bracha needs a Bar Piagofen. But according to the Sfardim, On Pesach night, they only say twice bar piagaf in the first and the third. They don't say on the second, they don't say on the fourth cup. So why did they say twice bar piagaf under the chuppah? It should be a contradiction. The Sfardim have a problem. It's a kasha. It was a machlokes. The Mordechai quote, that was a machlokes in the days of the Bali HaTosfos. Whether you say twice bar piagaf or once under the chuppah. The Rishonim introduced, because in the days, from the days of Maimon Hasini until the days of the Gaonim, the practice was that there was a long pause in between Eris and the Nisuin. A Yor and a Mitzvah, there was a year and a Wednesday, a long pause. So that's, and then the Gaonim made a takani should have Nisuin right away, right after Erisin. So we did away with the whole practice that was observed for centuries, that there's a long pause. So they quote Rashi, and the Rabbeinu Tam, and the Rabbeinu Tam's father, Rabbeinu Meir, Rashi and his children-in-law, and his grandchildren. They were the one, that family. They're the ones who introduced that you have to have a pause in between Eris and Isuin. So we have the pause by Kriyas HaKsubah. Somebody reads the Ksubah. So I thought that if a lot of times the family rabbi wants to hold a sermon under the chuppah, he wants to hold a drasha. Sometimes the family wants the rabbi to give a sermon, sometimes they don't want him to give a sermon, but they give a sermon. So the whole purpose of the reading of the ksubah is to make a hafsaka. So if someone wants to hold a drasha, I thought the best time to say the drasha is in between the eris and in the nisuin. The whole purpose of the reading of the ksubah is to have a hafsaka.
So Sheva always gave a drasha.
When? In between the eris and the nisuin. Oh, okay, good. I think that's the correct time. Other people have the practice that after the whole chuppah is over, then the rabbi holds a sermon before they go to the yichud room. So that says in the Shulchan Aruch that that's not right.
Right.
You should rush the chas and kala to the yichud room because you want the birchas nisuin to relate to the yichud. We're choshesh for the Rambam's opinion that you have to have the yichud in the yichud room later on. So the birchas nisuin should be connected. Now the photographers took over, so they don't let you go to the yichud room. They make everybody stand still, and everybody everybody's kissing everybody else. Everybody's kissing. All the mechatanim are kissing, so they don't. That's not right. More correct is you should go straight from the brachos onto the chuppah to go to the yichud room. The Gemara says that when you bench birchas hamazon by the wedding, you say Baruch Elokeinu shasimcha b'ma'ono. You add on shasimcha b'ma'ono. The Gemara says one of the Amoraim added on shasimcha b'ma'ono by a bris milah. The Gemara says we don't follow that opinion because there's tzara dinuka. That's how the Gemara said. 4 lines from the bottom of chesam and aleph. So other Rishonim said, oh, but by a pidyon aben there's no tzara dinuka. So then you should say shasimcha man. The others said no. There's no simcha in the first place. By a bris, there was a havamina. There I should say shas simcha manu, because the Gemara quotes the pasuk in Tehillim, Sosa noch alim asecha kemotzei sholo rav, that's a reference to bris milah. So it says sos, that bris milah is always done b'simcha. The Gemara says any mitzvah that the Jewish people accepted b'simcha, we still observe it b'simcha. And every mitzvah that we were belly aching about, we were complaining about, so there's always going to be machlokes. So when the Jewish people were told the dinim of Arayas, they were boichal mishpachosav, they were complaining. So that's why lekek suba de l'rami beit tigra. That's the Gemara in Shabbos, Masach Shabbos, in the first daf, and Rab Lezer de Milah. But the mitzvah of Milah, Avraham Avinu accepted the simcha. So that's why Arayim Hazeh, whenever there's a bris, everybody comes and everybody participates. The simcha. And by weddings, there's usually some kind of machlokes about something or another. So many people answer the benches that Baruch Elokeinu shasimcha b'ma'ono v'she'achalnu misharo. So the later post can say that that's a mistake. It's not supposed to be a vov. Baruch Elokeinu, you don't say Baruch Elokeinu shasimcha b'ma'ono. That's not a bracha. Shasimcha b'ma'ono is a description of Elokeinu. HaKodesh Baruch Hu is the one that whenever one is in his presence, there's going to be simcha. Whenever one is in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's always going to be simcha. But that's only a description about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Baruch Elokeinu she'achalna mishalom. So you shouldn't put a vav there. But Baruch Elokeinu, blessed be HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that He is the one she'asimcha. No, not that He is the one. Baruch Elokeinu, we say a description. She'asimcha no, and the bracha is she'achalna mishalom. It's really Baruch she'achalna mishalom. It's not Baruch she'asimcha and also she'achalna mishalom. It's only on she'achalna mishalom. So that vav is a mistake. That's what the later poskim put down. Half of the Siddurim they have it printed correctly, half of them have it printed incorrectly. With a vav. It's supposed to be without a vav. Oh, yesterday we started something we never finished, yeah. And the top Taisus on Chesam and Aleph was the Machlekes, the Rashbam and the Rabbeinu Tam. How many brachas are there? Bichas Hater in the morning. When you wake up, you say Bichas Hater every day. So the Rashbam is of the opinion that there are 3 different brachas. Then the next one is Haravna, and it's Muchal Chavato, so it doesn't have to begin with a Baruch. The Rabbeinu Tam says it can't be. The Rabbeinu Tam thinks that Muchal Chavato only applies if the first bracha was a bracha arucha and it has a chasima at the end. Baruch Atah Hashem, Shekashan Chatzvanu, Lasik B'Divrei HaEzer is a bracha ktsara. It's a bracha ktsara, so you can't say Haravna is Smucha L'Chavata. So you have to have the Girsa. The Rabbeinu Tam said more correct is the Girsa. Rabbi Yechanan Nisayim Bo. Rabbi Yechanan would complete the bracha by making it into a bracha arucha, and he would say the Haravna. So whenever it's one bracha, you add a vav. Whenever it's 2 brachas, you begin without a vav. So there were many Achrayim who had a practice. I think they write there, Moshe had that practice, that all week long when you daven Shemona Esrei, you say Atachayim. Achadan Ladam Dasam Lam Lanish Bina Chanenim Yitcha Dea Bina Vahaskel. Samatzoi Shabbos. How do you say? We say Atachan Atan Lamada Terasecha. Then you end off. Yeah, yesterday I couldn't find a place. Where is Myriv? Myriv. Oh, they're relying on the Nusach and Shachris. Atachan Antanu. Oh, it's by Mincha. Okay, it's not by Shachris. It's got to get used to this. Then you end off. We praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We praise Him HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Then you say Avinu Malkeinu. Then we have a bakasha. Hachal aleinu hayamim habayim l'kaseni l'shalom. Chasuchim m'kol chet, menuchim m'kol lavan, m'dibakim b'yirasecha. Please, give us Yerushalayim, give us menuchim m'kol lavan, v'chaneina me'yitcha de'abina v'haska yisei with avav. We ask for A, we ask for B, we ask for C. V'ina malkeinu, we're asking, do us a favor. Hachal aleinu habayim l'kaseni l'shalom. You have a vav. So the question is, what about all week long? And you're not saying Atachan Antonim. The last line, do you say V'chaneinu or do you say Chaneinu? So I think almost all the Siddurim, the vav V'chaneinu is only on Matzoi Shabbos. But there's a minority opinion. I think they printed that Rav Moshe had this practice. I think it's from the Marm Shik, that you should say V'chaneinu all week long, because it's all one bracha. That was the klal. That was the klal that the Rabbeinu Tam had when he was disagreeing with the Rashbam. The Rashbam held that the 2 different brachas. So he said Haravna, and because the Rabbeinu Tam held that it's one bracha, so he say the Haravna, that it's a continuation. So when you daven all week long, you say Atachayim Ladam Dasam Lam Lanish Bina Chanenim Yitcha is a new bracha. No, it's an Emshech of the same bracha. So you should have a vav. That's the argument. I don't think that makes sense. He didn't ask anything here. You're praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's the one who gives wisdom to human beings. So what he's saying, the first line is a Shevach, and the next line is a Bakosha. So it makes sense. Amatzoi Shabbos, when you say Avinu Malkeinu, Hachalanu give us A, Shalom, B, Chasub Mikol Chet, Menuka Mikol, Debakim Yosech, A, B, C, D, and E, V'chanenu Mitcha Der Bina V'Haskal. You're asking for A, B, C, and D. And each one starts off with a Vav. Here, the first one doesn't have a Vav. Hachalenu Hayabam Bayim Shenu Shalom, Umenuka Mikol Avan, Umedebakim B'Yosech, V'chanenu. You have one Vav and another Vav and another Vav. But on the weekdays when you're not saying Atolchan Antonu, the first line Atolchan Ladam Dasim Lam Lanishbin is a Shevach. You're praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you only have one Bakosha, so why should you say with a Vav? There's only if there are two Bakoshas.
What part of the Bracha is the Bakosha?
You're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please help us have more seichel. Give us more seichel. That's a Bakosha. The first line Atolchan is a statement of fact, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to be praised.
That he did give us understanding.
Huh?
That he did give us understanding.
Yeah. So we ask, but I don't think it makes sense to say V'chanenu all week long. This is the first thing you're asking for. It's not about kosher, it's a Shevach. So you should say Chanenu. I think that's wrong. I think that the Vav, you don't always add a Vav whenever it's all one bracha. If you said a Bakosha in the first one, then you want to say a Bakosha in the second one. But I think so.
Maybe by Birkas Torah isn't the first bracha, there's no Bakasha, no? It's a Birkas Mitzvah, you're saying, but however, now you're asking for a Bakasha.
What's the first bracha? So we say when we're learning, if you're going to say Harev, meaning it can be one bracha, even without the Vav, it can be one bracha. And you didn't ask anything in the first, I don't know, somehow I think it blends in though. You instructed us that we should learn, and we want the learning to be b'simcha, so we're building on that. I don't know. I think it's still different. Not true. When we learned the Gemara says if there's Panim Chadashot, then you say the Sheva Brachos all week long. So what's the definition of Panim Chadashot? So Taisus and the Rambam seem to clearly have a major machlokes. What does it mean? That's why I didn't understand how in Shulchan Aruch they quote Taisus and the Rambam. They're totally different. How can they blend in? Taisus sheet is that Shabbos is Panim Chadashot, because Shabbos you always have cheerful meal. You have Zmiras and you have the Beit Torah. Shabbos is always cheerful. So Friday night is a big meal, cheerful. Shabbos morning, a lot of times Chadashot is very brief because the day is not so long, and you had a lot of drushes in the morning by the Sheva Brachos in the morning. So if the Chassan says a Dvar Torah by the Chadashot, so the Ramah said that makes it into a Panim Chadashos. Makes it into Panim Chadash. Or Panim Chadash means if a guest comes, not a guest, an old man, he doesn't know who the people are, has no shaykhas at all. If someone comes that, say here there are two, the Shmuel and HaEzer points out in Siman base. He points out that there are two versions of what Taisus meant. Marbi Masimcha B'Shviloi. What does that mean? That the Chassan Kala are extremely excited over the fact that this individual came. He's someone very close. Let's say an uncle from Europe came, uncle from Eretz Yisrael came or something, and he shows up at one of the Sheva Brachos, so they're very excited, and that cheers them up. Or Mabri Masimcha B'Shviloi might mean because he's going to give a drasha, he's going to give a knockout speech, he's going to dance, he's going to sing, he's going to He's going to do something that's going to make it very cheerful, make it very lebedik. Or another version, Marbi Masimcha Bishvila, because of him they're going to serve a bigger meal. So the Beishmuel has up to two versions of what Taisus means. Marbi Masimcha Bishvila, they would normally give more food because he's there, or because it's going to be more cheerful. Or it's going to be more cheerful because it means so much to the Chas and Kala that he showed up. Sometimes you'll have one, you won't have the others. So that's a question. Which version do we accept over here, Marvin Bishvilo? And the Rambam has in Gansen a different version. Rambam says whoever, Panim Chadosh has nothing to do with how cheerful the meal is with or without him. It rather means someone who wasn't Yotze yet, the Sheva Brachos. So here there are two versions. The Rambam writes the favorites. The Mechaber quotes this in Siman Samach Beis. That the Rambam's opinion is Panim Chadosh means someone who neither attended the chuppah nor did he attend the Sheva Brachos previously, and he personally did not yet hear Sheva Brachos with respect to this Chos and Kala. So that's Panim Chadosh. So because of that person, we're mechuyev to have Sheva Brachos, that he should be Yotze his chiyuv. But then that's the first here. That's in Siman Samach Beis and Even Ezer Sib Zayin. But then the Mechaber has the Yesh Omrim, and it says on the side the Tur. The Tur disagrees with the Rambam. The Tur holds out there are two chiyuvim to say Sheva Brachos. One chiyuv under the chuppah, one chiyuv in a suda. So even if all the people were at the chuppah, and then all the people at the chuppah are attending the suda, and nobody came late, everybody was there to the chuppah, everybody was Yotze, there's another chiyuv to have Sheva Brachos by the suda. So even if there are people who were at the chuppah, but they didn't hear a Sheva Brachos yet by a meal, so then they can count as Panim Chadoshos. So then the Mechaber writes, V'chein Pashat HaMinig, he says, the Mechaber ends off Sib Zayin, the minig is like the Tur, that even if that is the minig, everybody goes to, let's say the wedding is far away, everybody goes, everybody was at the chuppah, and all the people at the chuppah stay for the meal. So they already heard Sheva Brachos under the chuppah. Still, you're mechuyev to hear Sheva Brachos by the meal. But the Beishmuel on this side, Sivkot Niyud, quotes that the Maharshal thought we should pass like the Rambam. No, Sivkot Niyud is the other one, where he has the two different understandings of the Tosfos, what's called Marbim Bishvilo. There's a different Sivkot, I forgot where it is already. Sivkot Neches, Siman Saman Beis Sivkot Neches, he said the Marshal Paskins and the Yamshel Shloimeh, like the Rambam sheet, the Kedas HaRambam, that Panim Chadosh means people who haven't heard Sheva Brachos at all. If all the people at the chuppah are all also coming to the meal, then you don't say Sheva Brachos. There's no Panim Chadoshos. But the common minig is like it says in Shulchan Aruch. But he says the Marshal thinks we should follow the Rambam.
So in order to have a Panim Chadosh, you have to have someone who is not at the chuppah?
Yeah, that's the Rambam's opinion. Whoever was at the chuppah was Yotze Sheva Brachos already.
Right.
But the Torah assumes that there are two chiyuvim. There's one chiyuv to say Sheva Brachos by the chuppah, and whoever was there was Yotze that. But then everybody who participates in this Suda has a chiyuv to say Sheva Brachos, to hear Sheva Brachos once at the Suda. So the Marshal thinks we should pass like the Rambam. They quote in Shulchan Aruch, they quote the Tshuvas HaRambam, we're never too sure how reliable these Tshuvas are, if they're authentic, but they quote a Tshuvas HaRambam that the Seder is not Miyakev and the Sheva Brachos. Let's say you say them out of order, because a lot of times now they have different cards. So under the chuppah, they give the next person the wrong card, and he says the wrong bracha. So you yotze that bracha, and the bracha that they should have said, they'll say next. If you say out of order, if you damish b'an esrei and the brachas are out of order, that's a machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. The Gemara says emtsoyas, the middle 13 brachas in the Shemona Esrei, ein lehem seder. So Rashi learns ein lehem seder. Even if you recited the brachas out of order, you yotze b'di'evet. Tosa disagrees with Rashi. You're not Yotze B'diavad. Over here, so we assume like the Rambam that you're Yotze B'diavad. So Moshe Feinstein has a suggestion. You have two brachas that are identical, Yotzer HaOdam. So the first one is Bekitzer, Yotzer HaOdam. Second one is a long, Asher Yotzos Hodam B'Tzalmud, Tzalim Nostab Nisai. And the last line is Yotzer HaOdam. So what if they made a mistake? They said the long bracha first. Does it make sense to have somebody say the short bracha? Everything that it said in the short bracha was said already in the long bracha. You already said everything. If you say first the short bracha, then you say the long bracha, so you're adding a lot more to the bracha. But if by mistake he said the long bracha first, or Moshe said that he thinks it'll be a bracha levatala, to say the short bracha Yotzer HaOdam. I wasn't there, but people say that once at a wedding, they made such a mistake, and Rabbi Soloveitchik was there, and he said what happened at the wedding was. That's why they say over. I don't know how reliable it was. So they said that before they started the chuppah, they asked the following rabbis to please come up to the front. So they had 8 rabbis came up to the front. Then by mistake they said, the long bracha before Yotzer HaOdam. So it's going to turn out that 7 out of the 8 will have a bracha, and one of the people who walked up to the front is going to be left without a bracha. So Rabbi Soloveitchik thought that in such a situation, he said, okay, Rav Moshe maybe is right, but he said if one of the rabbis is going to be embarrassed, he's going to be left with, they called him up to sit in the front because they planned to give him a bracha, and then it comes out that the last one is going to lose out. So he thought that then you should say both. I wasn't there. I don't know if it's true. It's what to think about. What to think about.
That be because Kavod Abris is Dochis or Darabanan maybe, and the guy's going to get embarrassed publicly?
That's a question. How much embarrassment is there? Is really an embarrassment?
I mean, it calls up and you don't get the...
Yeah.
They have you sit in the front row thinking you're going to get a bracha, and you don't get a bracha?
Don't get a bracha because they made a mistake.
But that's a bullshit.
Is it really?
If it was a prominent row? No?
I don't know. That's what they say. There was one such an incident. I don't know how reliable it is. Let me say one word in. We have a lot more here. Let me say one word in. We changed a lot from the Nusach and the Gemara every so often. So we say, She'asalanas harus v'italanas hanasuas lanu. The Nusach and the Gemara in the Rishonim, v'italanas hanasuas. So it sounds like any woman who has nisuin, I can sleep with her, but she has nisuin with someone else. So we had the word hanasuas lanu. That the Baalei HaTosfos added on. I think they quote the Rabbi Natan added on hanasuas lanu, that people shouldn't mistake and think that they're permitted to live with any woman who has nisuin, even though they're not the husband. Okay, Belinetta will have to continue next week. Okay, good. Well, we got to start Chazor. Because Chino is coming up. So.
Rebbe. Rebbe mentioned that when Beis Din wanted to give someone misa, they would give the guy a little bit of wine to get him drunk. Could you extend this to sedation today? Suppose we had like a Beis Din today or a Sanhedrin today. Would it be, from this principle, would it be mutter to sedate someone with like anesthesia and then perform the misa from this principle, or is that too far?
Maybe you should.
Okay.